Most systems of behavioral modification rely on a strict binary. You are either succeeding or you are failing. You are good or you are bad. But treating behavioral alignment as a static destination creates a fragile architecture. The moment an individual makes a mistake or relapses, the binary state flips to fail, often leading to a complete systemic collapse. To study a more resilient model, we can look inside a live clinical recovery environment. Here, instructors have developed a structural behavioral framework designed to survive the messy reality of human error. In a high-stakes cognitive recovery setting, abstract moral judgments are a liability. They are replaced here with a mechanical, directional navigation system. This handwritten document is a primary field artifact from one of those recovery sessions. It maps human behavior along a central dividing axis. This creates a structural shift. Behavioral alignment is no longer a fixed state you achieve. It is a vector you aim for. The left side represents adaptive, pro-social traits, like honesty, humility, and selflessness. The right side catalogs maladaptive traits, greed, anger, and self-importance. In reality, no individual exists purely on one side of this line. Human behavior naturally oscillates across this divider depending on the environment. Alignment in this system isn't determined by your exact location on the map. It is determined by your orientation toward the center. This raises an operational question. If an individual drifts deep into negative territory on the right, what mechanisms do they use to navigate back? The framework identifies 5 hinge variables directly on the axis: observant, loyal, willing to change, respect, and stubborn. These are neutral tools. You can be loyal to a destructive habit just as easily as a constructive goal. Of these 5 nodes, stubbornness, defined here as an active unwillingness to learn, acts as the primary frictional force. It is the mechanism that traps individuals on the negative side of the board. Overcoming that stubbornness requires dismantling the individual's assumed definitions of their own emotions. Without precise semantic definitions, these hinge variables jam. If the language is corrupted, navigation breaks down. This requires a process of semantic reprogramming. If an individual misdefines a word, that definition can directly sabotage their behavioral output. Consider how societal definitions conflate jealousy and envy. Operationally, jealousy is recognizing a desired state someone else possesses. It's a healthy motivator for acquisition. Envy, however, is a destructive threat response, the urge to ruin what another person has. This specific semantic distinction is documented directly in the clinical field notes, separating the motivator from the threat. The framework applies a second critical semantic correction, dividing stress from worry. Stress has a functional utility. It provides the adrenaline and focus required to solve problems and drive healthy behavioral friction. Worry operates differently. It creates a cycle of overthinking that offers no constructive outlet, often resulting in complete cognitive paralysis. Within this framework, these semantic corrections function as required updates for the behavioral operating system. Achieving this semantic precision allows the individual to reclassify environmental pressure, engaging with stress as a motivator rather than sinking into the paralysis of worry. Even with the right language, there is a final barrier: the shame individuals associate with their core identity when they make a mistake. To bypass this, the framework creates a structural separation between the self and the personality. The inner self is immutable, containing natural talents and core purpose. The outer personality, however, is a changeable construct built from habits and attitudes. This separation ensures that any intervention is localized strictly to the outer behavioral layer. When an individual realizes their personality is just a product of choices, they completely regain agency over their actions. Protecting the inner self from criticism removes the burden of shame. This frees up the cognitive load to adjust the hinge variables. By isolating core identity from behavioral error, the individual can focus entirely on the technical adjustments required to move back toward the center. All of these concepts ultimately plug back into the primary navigation system, the beam. Imagine an individual who has drifted deep into off-beam territory, operating entirely on maladaptive variables like anger and dishonesty. The system does not demand instantaneous, impossible teleportation back to the safe side. Instead, it requires the mechanical act of vector correction. The individual acknowledges their position, utilizes their willingness to change, and points their intent back toward the center axis. This brings us to the core heuristic of the framework, recorded directly in the primary documentation. The rule is explicitly stated. As long as you are working toward being on the beam, you are on the beam. This vector-based tracking creates a system with massive tolerance for human error, preventing the spiraling failure that traditionally accompanies binary, pass-fail methods. A mistake is just a data point, not an identity shift. When you stack accurate semantic language, localized personality targeting, and vector-based alignment, you create a complete intervention model. True growth isn't about achieving a static state of perfection. It is about maintaining the correct behavioral trajectory through a reliable operating system.